going on, guys? You are listening to the Phil Talk Sports podcast, where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of sports. As always, I am your host, Phil Nunziata, joined today all the way from, I assume, sunny California, the founder of the Dream Season Football League and play-by-play announcer, Nick Rice. What's going on, man?
Well, for the first time in this series, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Video also makes just for an extra component. I might be the one that actually might be dressed better than you for today, for today, which is highly unusual on this podcast, but I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm also glad to see what we got going on today.
Yeah, for those on the podcast, Nick is showing off his brand new Anthony Davis t-shirt, which you let me know off air he got at Walmart. So good score by him. I'm just here with a regular UCF shirt. The reason for my shirt anyway, obviously NBA playoffs in full swing, so his shirt makes sense. But my reason is college football has been played. College football will be played this weekend. And I kind of want to get on the rooftops and scream it because we really didn't think it was going to come. But we did have a game this past week. Austin Peay and Central Arkansas took center stage. I know I watched at least a bit of it. I know you were busy watching your Lakers because I texted you about it. But, college football does continue throughout the week. Nothing that's really going to make you run to the TV necessarily. The biggest college game of this week is it's on Monday, actually, and it's BYU and Navy. That's probably the two most recognizable teams actually playing each other. But before we get into the real-life college season, obviously during the introduction I told everyone, and we've talked about it before, your creation on YouTube, your YouTube presence as ChargerDude95 is the creator of the Dream Season Football League, which has usually been done through Madden, creating the greatest rosters, whether single years, all time, of professional football. Recently, we just wrapped up a series. I say we. Nick did most of the work. I was just there to help a little bit.
Please.
We took the Dream Season Football League formula, and we gave it a college twist. We took the 24 greatest college programs based on championships, whether conference or national, All-Americans, draft picks, multiple factors, Heisman Trophy winners, things like that, and faced them off in a single elimination 24-team tournament with an all-time roster set, so guys from multiple generations on the same team, to find out who the greatest program of all time is. That series has since concluded. Me and Nick called the championship game last week. It was a load of fun. If you haven't seen it, don't just skip to the championship. You'll rob yourself of a lot of great games. It's only about 5 or 6 videos total, I think, with all the rounds in there. So, Nick, how did you feel? This is our first time really doing anything like this. We took the formula that you've made successful and gave it a college twist. People have talked about wanting it, your fans, your followers, for a while. I think we made it happen. I think it came out great.
Yeah, I think it came out pretty cool. To your point about the generations, I'm an LA guy, so seeing Marcus Allen at running back, Matt Leonard at quarterback, and then Keyshawn Johnson at wide receiver just blows your mind, but it's just a cool thing that we've done. And I think it became such an interesting and such a highly thought of series that, I mean, we got to have some sort of an encore. So make sure to stay tuned. But it was cool. It was a lot of fun. It was something that for a game that is last generation, I think it looked better than I thought it would, which might play into a topic that we have in the future for this video or another video. But as far as football games are concerned, NCAA Football 14 definitely shines.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the more timeless video games. I mean, people are going on 7 years of playing it almost nonstop. Obviously, groups like Maximum Football, who I am like a Patreon subscriber of, their new game drops this month. They don't have a date yet, but it is in September. I know there's hopes that we can get that franchise to the point that people no longer have to dig out their 360s and their PS3s to get their college fix. Maximum Football and the guys over at Canuck Play are really trying to make that dream a reality. But for now, NCAA Football 14 is still the king of the college genre. Luckily, EA, while they can't make more games, they are mercifully keeping the servers open, so roster sharing made this possible. Obviously, without it, It would have taken a lot more time, and it would have been something I would have had no way to help with unless I mailed you a flash drive across the country. So it would have been safe to say that it would not have been done in the timely manner that it was. Did you feel, I mean, again, you've been doing season-long NFL seasons with this formula, resulting in a playoffs and a championship. Skipping that whole regular season format and going right to a single elimination tournament, I know you had your reservations on because it was tweaking it a little bit, but forgoing the season, I think it made it more exciting. It brought a March Madness feel to football almost.
Something that you don't usually see other than recently with the college football playoff. But honestly, watching the games play out, I did feel a sense that there was still a little bit missing, which I think makes this rivalry thing that we might be doing, some other college football, makes it that much more important because there were a number of teams that were every bit as good as the ones that advanced, but they didn't make it because it's just a single elimination format. So it was awesome to see teams go down right away. We saw a couple of last play touchdowns, and given how long the games are, it was amazing to see it come down to that, but not too surprising considering how close talent-wise a lot of these teams were. So it left something to be desired, but that's the whole point of March Madness in college football.
Right, yeah. We had last-second touchdowns. We had great last-second drives. We had, upsets early on. We had some upsets in the middle. I think by the end of it, the teams you expected to be there were kind of there, but the road to get there was a lot of fun. So, again, if you have not seen this series yet, the greatest program of all time tournament, brought to you by ChargerDude 95, go check it out on YouTube. And, again, do not skip to the championship game that me and Nick call actually play-by-play and color. Watch it from the beginning, enjoy the ride, and like he said, hopefully we will have more content with that game and that roster set moving forward. So just stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned. ChargerDude 95 and the NCAA All-Time Teams Tournament.
Yep. So that takes care of our video game college football talk. But as I said in the intro, we have real-life college football coming as soon as tomorrow. I think definitely on Saturday. We have some Conference USA teams. I think the biggest conference playing over the weekend is the American. I believe Memphis plays somebody. I think UAB plays in again, not games that are going to make you run to your television, but just the fact that college football is being played. I actually saw maybe an hour before we came on here that the Austin Peay Central Arkansas games come back 0 tests. They had fans in the stands, not a lot, limited capacity, but they have a clean bill of health. They've proven that it can be done, which of course begs the question for conferences like the Big Ten that have maybe, and I think we even agreed when it happened, may have jumped the gun in their decision. Do you think they're feeling the heat? It'll be more when 2-3 weeks go down the line and when the SEC starts playing and things of that nature. UCF, for example, doesn't play till the 18th. Do you think they're starting to feel the pressure about this? And obviously the Pac-12 has made the same decision. The MAC has decided to just, not even open back up till next year. But the Big Ten seems to be getting the blunt of it because they were so first and foremost to just cancel the season right away or postpone it at least.
I'll be the first to tell you I was a little bit mistaken prior to the year. Seeing the news reports and watching the MLB have the sort of outbreak that we saw, I wasn't completely I wasn't completely shocked to see the Big Ten and the Pac-12 make the decisions they made. And once they did that, the Mountain West followed suit, and I felt that the remainder of the big conferences would have some sort of a reduction in schedule, if not completely eliminate college football for the fall. I felt that would be the case. Then we have seen this virus take a turn in the sports world. The NBA handle it the way that they have in college football, and I stand a little bit corrected. I think that this not only can be done at a high level, but it can be a situation where in some instances players are almost better off or safer being on the football field and with a constant renewal of testing and all of the procedures that it takes versus otherwise. And I stand a bit corrected. I thought that if they play college football, there might be some amount of outbreak, a small amount. Seeing Clemson have over 30 tests positive prior to them going to camp, I was a little skeptical, but I think that if all the conferences were to come back, the big ones where they can afford the testing, I think they would have been very well off. And like you said, they may have some of the conferences jumped the gun a little bit on what they did in the long run.
Yeah, I think it started as a rumor. I think it's been a foregone conclusion that when the Big Ten made their decision as early as they did, they thought they had more support from the other conferences. The ACC was expected to follow suit. They were pretty much going to squeeze the SEC into agreeing with everybody else. So not only did they think it was the right move, they thought they were going to be applauded for making this decision as quickly and as swiftly as they have. That clearly was not the case. So I don't know if they did it just to save face and strictly to be a PR move. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but they clearly did not get the reception that they expected. And now there's rumors of starting in the starting as early as Thanksgiving weekend into October even, and then either a late post-Christmas, early January. Like, things are all over the place. There are people coming out saying that none of this is true, but these rumors have to start somewhere, obviously. Do you think they never really set a timetable. All this talk of spring football, realistically, I think they were always thinking January, February. So the term spring football to me was almost incorrect. They really should have been calling it like winter football, because it would have been much earlier than March or April or your traditional springtime. So, how early do you think – and, of course, this all comes down to the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season we are getting to have – I think it's a little unrealistic to say there'll be no positive cases, but if there is a minimal amount of positive cases, I think it might, push them closer to that Thanksgiving time frame than the February time frame.
Yeah. Before I answer that, I'd first like to preface with stating that this virus is something that should be taken seriously. Social distance, mask, those are all very important procedures to take to slow the spread of the virus. But with all that said, I think that college football definitely can be played, and it can be played at a high level and a very safe level if the testing is done at the ways that it seems right now some of the other conferences are doing. So I certainly applaud, the conferences that stuck with it, and it looks like we'll have a pretty fun season. With that being said, as far as addressing what's going on right now, I would say with college football, it is something that is such an amazing opportunity to bring people together. And the fact that some of these conferences, outside of the Big Ten and Pac-12 were able to weather the storm, I think is great. And once they see this ball rolling, the Big Ten and Pac-12, I'm sure, want things to happen sooner than later. As close to a winter and still to have some of the fall there would be huge, not just to avoid playing in 0-degree conditions, yes, but also because of the NFL draft and how much that conflicts what's going on in the spring.
Yeah, that's a great point too. The weather factor, like, it'd be one thing to play in February in the SEC country, the ACC country, but the Big Ten, Penn State playing, Ohio State playing in February. Mm-hmm. It's one thing if it's like the last game of the season, because they tend to get some snow towards the end of a Big Ten season. But to play a whole season like that does seem a little bit stricter. It might be creating more avenues for issues than playing, now. And, of course, a lot of this is to the point of, we need to see if they play. And obviously the NFL, which we'll get to next, is gearing up. Every area, every conference, and every school seems to have a different policy as far as attendance goes. This is a personal experience I can share. For example, Memphis, a conference rival of UCF, has come out and said, if you have season tickets, you're allowed to go, because we have about 12,000 season ticket holders, and that's about 25%. So you're good. I, being a UCF season ticket holder, they're actually going the other way. The money I've spent on my season ticket package is being rolled over to next year, and they will have 25% capacity games that you can just buy at a single basis. So if I want to go to a game, I have to buy a ticket like anybody else, but my tickets are held for me for next year and they're already paid in full. So it really just depends on the school and really the conference, probably whatever they think is the most fair. or what, and I'm fine with the decision they made. If I want to go to a game, I still can. The money I spent doesn't just disappear, which is the case in some schools. I don't want to, single any of them out, but it does become a case-by-case basis. Same with the NFL. Like, I know the Eagles are not having fans at all in the first game of the year. That could change, but for now that is the case. I don't know. I assume I know the Raiders and, their brand new stadium will be open to no fans, which will be crazy. So I do applaud the ability to let each individual, because it's not a blanket statement. Like, the West Coast is obviously being handled by the virus way different than the East Coast and Middle America. So those need to be handled based on their surroundings and not just what, someone in D.C. is saying. So I do appreciate the fact that the individual circumstances get to, decide how they're going to handle it moving forward.
Yeah, and that was one of the major components of the Pac-12 canceling their year, figuring that 5 different schools, 2 of which is, the LA schools, but 5 total had hotspots, like major complications with coronavirus. So that was one of the determining factors. But ultimately, with college football being dragged back like it is, I think they would be very much inclined to start sooner than later, with the weather, with the draft, and also with just the of course, the integrity of the year is significant, to figure out a way to crown a champion. I mean, they have a college football ranking thing right now. They throw one out there with all the Pac-12 and Big Ten in. I mean, Ohio State is second to Clemson in those rankings, which is fascinating. But I would say another significant thing is just, for the players' health, because other than the ones trying to go to the draft, they're interested in playing 4 years. And it is significant to say you're going to play spring football, then turn around a few months later and start training for the following 2021 season. So all those into consideration, you have to think about the health of the players at some point. And the coronavirus is significant. But if you are going to play a year, I think you might have bigger problems if you delay it past Thanksgiving, which already will be tough for those players that want to go into the draft next year.
I think if they manage to get their ducks in a row and play in the November-October timeframe, because they're obviously only playing conference only, so they kind of skipped that non-conference month and a half of the season, and they can almost not, seemingly get right back into line with the rest of the schools. Obviously, they'll have played less games, but there is a version of this that comes out not looking like a cluster. I think there's only one. Makes me think of like Doctor Strange. We look at all the possibilities, and there's only one where this comes out right. But I think if they try to play in January, February, do they expect, let's say Clemson and Alabama make the college football playoff? Are they supposed to wait till the Big Ten finishes to see if Ohio State should qualify? Like, if their goal is to be a part of a championship situation, they kind of have to get in line to some degree. I mean, when this news came out and it was almost immediately shot down by not the commissioner, because a lot of people were saying the Big Ten commissioners who said this originally, makes me think they don't want to be married to this decision. It's probably just something that they're floating around. But I think by the week the SEC starts, which I believe you said is the 28th, so that'll have been the 3rd week of just games being played. I think by then the Big Ten may have to get some sort of plan. Because really, Thanksgiving week is usually a big time for Thanksgiving weekend is usually a big time for college football. So they could sneak right back into there with some big marquee games, Penn State, Ohio State, Nebraska, Iowa, whatever it may be, and they'll be back to full force because they do have the advantage of they've already lopped 3 to 4 games off the season because they're not going to play non-conference. So that's 3 to 4 games they're not worried about. They're just trying to play their 8 to 10 game season. And so, again, there is a version of this where they do fall back in line if they can get it done in that time frame.
Even though the narrative would be if the Pac-12 and Big Ten all underachieve, like all the teams fall down in the rankings, then, there could be a pretty bad narrative about how late they started. And I think there's too much money to go around for them to just completely cancel the year, given how these other schools have managed. I mean, I think the only way the Big Ten and Pac-12 don't come back is if there's a random complete outbreak. And as the MLB has proved, even an outbreak can be contained if you all go through the right quarantining procedures. So I think this is inevitable for them to come back. And it's the one and only time where I love the extended break between the conference championships and the bowl games. I mean, throughout the course, I'm not as long of a college football fan as you, but I've always been of the mindset that the 4 weeks separating the two is in my opinion, way too long. I mean, I lose complete interest because I forget the storylines in a month.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think that this is the one time where the Pac-12 and Big Ten, they don't have the 4-week layoff if they come back at a certain time, and then they all play the championships at the right time. So it's the one time where it might end up working out.
And you mentioned bowl games because that's something that hasn't really been talked about a whole lot. There's only been 1 or 2 games, bowl game, committees that have said, we're just going to forgo this season and come back next year. But it is that lower tier. Obviously, you're not going to tell the Cotton Bowl that they're not going to host teams. You're not going to, and even the bigger end Outback Bowl, some of the bigger that usually would host an SEC team. I think there's usually like 30 bowl games. I wouldn't be shocked if that number gets closer to 20. Some of those lower tiers, just don't worry about it this year. Because if they can't have fans in those bowl games, there's no point in having them. That's where the money is made in the Dollar General Bowl and places like that. And I always use that one as like, the example of a lower tier bowl. So I think you'll get the top 20. You'll get some of the ones that you're not, that are on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday that you maybe don't get to watch anyway. So you won't really get to miss much. But I think again, assuming it all works out, and you mentioned baseball has proven that you probably can't deal with an overall arching pandemic, but an entire team can get affected, schedules can get shifted around, and you can eventually get back to some level of normalcy. So if anything, the mistakes that baseball has made, particularly the Marlins have made, let's be honest, because they were the root of that evil. I know St. Louis had some issues as well, but it was mostly Miami. That the storm can be weathered, and just because there's a rocky start doesn't mean you can't get back onto a smooth road. So overall, the last time me and you did an episode of this, we had no reason to believe that everything wasn't about a week away from being canceled. So I think if we could go back and tell ourselves a month and a half ago that we'd be where we are now, we'd be very relieved and very happy. And I think that's still how I feel. The fact that some semblance of college football will be played, it might be a more slimmed down version. But I think in years past, we'll kind of forget. It's not going to have this huge asterisk on it that some people, probably Big Ten people, are saying it would have without every single all 130 D1 schools playing. Like they're not all a necessity for it to still be a memorable year.
If the commissioner of the Big Ten or the Pac-12 is listening right now, I would just like to make this argument.
And I'm sure they are.
Yes, they definitely are.
I'm sure they are.
Because they're interested in how we talk about the teams that advance out of our round of 24.
Exactly.
We'll give that to you. All right, we're teasing it, but we'll give it to you.
Charger 95 YouTube. Yep, check it out.
That's right. The positivity rate of all these major sports right now, and college football too, is lower than the overall positivity of the country. So I'm not saying that it'll be perfect. I'm not saying that college football, like Central Arkansas, won't have a couple positive tests at some point. But overall, it is a safe undergoing if you can go through the testing that you see a lot of these sports leagues go through. And if there's a level of accountability about avoiding some of the distractions that usually would be no problem, I think it's a pretty safe procedure, and do it.
Let's get it done.
That's what I say.
So we go from college football, who, as we said a month and a half ago, we almost never thought we'd get to this point. The NFL, it really never seemed like an issue of if they were going to play. It was a matter of would there be fans, and much like college, every franchise in every different state is kind of going at a different way. I mentioned the Eagles won't have fans. I don't think the kickoff game will, which is a shame for the Chiefs. But with that game being played 8 days from now, a week from tomorrow, Thursday, the 10th, NFL will kick off, Chiefs and Texans. The Chiefs got their it really is because we're so used to the preseason, and every year it's the same thing, and I never get tired of it. I actually love it. You know the preseason's going to be on, and you're like, oh, I'm so hyped for this. You watch about a quarter, and then you're like, all right, I guess I'm good, because then I don't have to watch Blaine Gabbert pretend to know how to throw a football for 3 more quarters. But the fact that it was there, you knew football was coming. And with it not there, you're like, oh, my God, we got a game next week. It's crazy. So,
and you see, like, the backup quarterback for my favorite team passed for this. Maybe he's worth keeping on a 53-man roster.
Right. So you get all those little training camp storylines. You get the undrafted receiver who had 2 100-yard games, and you got the your starting running backs playing like a bum, but it's like he only got like 12 carries in 3 weeks or whatever. All those little training camp storylines that people deal with. But to get back to actual NFL football, every game we'll see this year will now matter. I mean, with the Chiefs and Texans kicking off, the Chiefs received their Super Bowl rings yesterday at time of recording, looking pretty sweet. Definitely. I mean, at this point, though, a Super Bowl ring almost can't be worn without like weighing down your hand. Like, I appreciate, the resources that can go into it, but like, at what point is it too much? Like, at what point is a ring, like, should it just be a watch at this point that you could wear? I don't know if they would want to change this whole thing up, but like, I thought when the Patriots had their 6th ring, it'd be the biggest one ever made. And I think this Chiefs one and the Broncos one from Super Bowl 50, I think are the biggest ones out there. I think we have reached the point where the size of the ring is at max capacity if you still want it to fit on a human hand.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm with you. I'm just saying that I'm sure there's a way for them to increase the size of it. But, yeah, it is pretty insane. But the Chiefs certainly, with the way that they came back, maybe this is going to be the biggest ring. I mean, we've never seen 3 double-digit playoff comebacks in a row to win a Super Bowl. So any of the 6 the Patriots won, they can't say that.
Right. So the other thing that comes with the start of the NFL season for a lot of fans, of course, is fantasy football. And also, typically, most leagues would have everything situated by now. I think a lot of people, including us, our fantasy football draft is this weekend. I got the magazine right here. I'm doing my research, ready to take the league by storm this year. But a lot of teams waited to see, the opt-outs and stuff. Kramer, feel bad for him, drafted Leonard Fournette, and his team released him 2 days later. These are the issues you run into when you draft a little too early. But overall, what has been your experience playing fantasy football? I think there's people that take it too seriously. There's people that don't set their lineups, and then there's everywhere in between. I personally have had a great time playing fantasy football. I've started in 2010, my senior year of high school, won a couple leagues, have played well in others, played terrible in the rest of them. But it's just a great way. I was explaining to a new member of our league. It's a great way to watch games that your team isn't in. It gives you a whole nother rooting interest. So I've always been a big fan of it. I'm not one that takes it too seriously, but I also take it seriously enough to play properly. So what has been your experience in fantasy football over the years?
Well, 2 things. First, one, Leonard Fournette, I'm amazed how quickly media and the country has turned on this guy. I mean,
cleared waivers today.
He was a few years ago, one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I know the shelf life for NFL backs is very, very short. That's why Alvin Kamara I think that's why he's holding out, because he sees the tunnel at the end of the road. Like, he might not last to the end of his second contract, given how many times he touches the ball. 1, 2, the other thing is you've got to go into a league where guys are going to set their line. Nothing's worse than winning a game because the guy had 3 inactive players on the roster. So
that's true.
There's that too. And then the third thing is, set your draft as late as possible. I mean, how many draft blunders do we have to see before, that sort of thing happens? I'm excited for the fantasy, and I'm looking forward to doing my draft in a couple days with you there, Phil. With that being said, I think the biggest storyline going into the fantasy is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It seems to be everyone's favorite running back to pick, thinking, on paper that it's a young running back. Usually first-round tailbacks early in their career play well in today's day and age, and he just literally has the greatest surrounding cast in the NFL this year with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I say all that to say you're probably right. I think he's a top 2, top 3 round running back, but I wouldn't go so hard as to say he's going to be a first round, considering how many great runners there are around him. But I mean, that's the fascinating spot for me. Where does Edwards-Helaire land?
Yeah, my thing, the magazine I just held up a minute ago, I really started doing my deep dive, and I realized, like, how many really running backs in general, like, it's a very running back rich year. I feel like not every year do you have as many proven backs. Like, I always, when I do my draft for anything, the top 5 at any position, like, I just kind of skip that, because if they're there, you take them, and if not, you have to do more research. So I kind of start digging through who I'd want 6 and down. So by skipping the first 5 of a position, you see how good there's still guys that'll be remaining. It's pretty awesome. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it this year. I'm normally I have a league that I run that Nick is in and other people. I have one with coworkers of mine at the Daytona Tortugas and other sporting events I work at. I joined a 3rd league with my brother-in-law for money. I'm not usually a money player, but I figured why not? It's with people I know. 3 is really my limit. And again, I'm not usually a money player. This is really the first time ever I've done it. But 3 is really my limit. How many leagues is too many? Because you hear these stories of guys have like 5 leagues on Yahoo and 5 on ESPN. We use ESPN. And then the NFL, like, it just jumps all over the place. To me, 3 is my absolute limit. I really only like 2, but with the 3rd one being for money, it gives it a whole nother flavor. But 3 is my absolute limit. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you just made your spiel about 3. My opinion is it's 2, because even with 2, you've got rooting interests against each other at some point during it's inevitable. You're not going to draft the same players across the board, and there will be a moment when your receiver in one league plays your defense in another league. So
very true.
It's just a matter of time. But I think 2 is the golden number. I only stick with 1 because I'm a little superstitious in that way. 1 has worked out for me pretty much every year. I seem every year to advance in the playoffs, and I go by one common formula. You have to love your quarterback, and everything else, just do your research like Phil does. But there is nothing worse than switching quarterbacks every week.
Yes.
You've got to have that one superstar. From back in the day when it was Peyton Manning, I'd draft every year. I'd figure out a way to snag one of the top quarterbacks, and that's your pick. Even if you've got like an Adrian Peterson in his heyday on the board, you pick the quarterback, in my opinion, and then the rest will figure itself out.
The one guy, you say how you were year in, year out, Peyton Manning, the one guy that I've always managed to get on my team, whether it be when he was a first-round talent or I picked him up after the draft, I've been very fortunate to almost always end up with Larry Fitzgerald on my team. It's really? To the point now where I go out of my way. If it's late in the round and it's, 5th, 7th round, something like that, and it's him and someone else on my board, I take Larry just to keep the trend going. So I've been very fortunate because even in his old age, he's a 11, 12, 13-point a week guy. Larry Fitzgerald has been, for whatever reason, just a guy that ends up on my team almost every year.
It's interesting, and it speaks to the folks that are interested in a quarterback. And I think what would be a great backup option is Kyler Murray. It seems almost inevitable that he's going to have a great year because a couple of things. One is his surrounding cast is ridiculous with the trade for DeAndre Hopkins. 2, it seems every second-year quarterback, your guy Carson Wentz is one of those. One of the best years is when you're on a rookie contract, second year in, and you've got a lot of well-paid guys around you, and they're working on that $1 million signing bonus. So with all that said, I think Fitz is a great option and Murray is a great option because that team is probably going to be down in a lot of games, and there's going to be a lot of silly yardage put up by him and Hopkins and maybe whoever else is on that team.
Yeah, that's true. They'll be throwing the ball late because they'll probably need to. The other bit of advice I tend to get, like we have a couple first-time players in our league coming this year. I'm excited about that. I tell them don't draft too many people from your team. Keep it to 1 or 2. 2 is really my thing there. And then in general, don't draft too many guys from the same team because then bye weeks come and you're going to be in trouble. But as far as the magic number as for leagues to be in, I quote the great comedian Chris Porter, I still agree with you, is you get 3, but that's really 1 more than you should get. 2 is probably the right number, but I always find myself in 3 for whatever reason. For those who don't play fantasy, if you think it's too much or whatever, because you've been around people that take it too seriously, if you play it at your speed, it's actually a lot of fun. It gives you a reason to check out other games. But something I've also added that I want to throw in there, There's a thing on ESPN called Pigskin Pick'ems, where you just pick the games each week, and it keeps track of, your correct percentage and games win or lost. I created a group on there called 386 Picks. It's open to the public if you want to jump in that league, not really a league, but that group, so that your picks are monitored and tracked, and you can see how good you were at guessing games this year. That is open in the ESPN Pigskin Picks. 386 Picks is the name of the group. So go ahead and feel like joining it and just see how well you did. I joined that halfway through last year. I tried that out. The first week I got every game right, and I was like, well, this will never happen again. And then the rest of the way I was up and down. But it was funny that the first week I did it, it was every single pick right. So I want to do that for a whole season. So Nick, I invite you and other people to jump in there. 386 Picks for the last time. That's a very simpler. If you think fantasy's too much, give this a try. It's definitely a much slower speed. So we mentioned earlier. Yeah, we mentioned earlier, we've talked college and pro. We talked college video games as well, as we were bringing NCAA 14 to the forefront of your channel, at least for now. Earlier in this week, Madden 21 dropped to a little bit of fanfare, a little bit of not. I'm actually picking it up tomorrow. Nick already has the game. Without giving too much details, I don't know how much of it you've played. Really, I'll say this now. The reason I'm buying it is I'm intrigued by the yard mode. I'm a big NFL Street player, NFL Street 2 to be exact. Anyone that's been on my Instagram recently would see that. So if the yard mode plays anything similar to NFL Street, I'll be happy with the purchase. But what are your opinions in the week or so you've had the game?
Well, before I get to that and unload all of my opinions, I will do the thing I begrudge, and I will wipe out your seamless transition there, Phil. I'm sorry. I just want to real quick mention the Sean, if I'm not mistaken, you said he drafted Leonard Fournette.
Yes.
You mentioned don't draft more than 2 players for your, of one team on your fantasy team. Mm-hmm. If you draft nobody on the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think you would probably be fine in your fantasy league. I want to bring that up.
Unless you're Gardner Minshew, because if you draft Gardner Minshew in the first round, Bud Light is going to send you a free case of beer. So if you're
really?
Yeah, you haven't heard about this? Yeah. If you draft Gardner Minshew in the first round, I don't know if it has to be the NFL fantasy. I'll have to look more into it. But if you screenshot and tweet them proof that you've drafted him in the first round, you get a free case of beer from your buddies at Bud Light. So if you're gonna take a Jaguar, I guess that's the one to do it. But yeah, please continue.
So forget about your opinion about 2 fantasy leagues. Bring out 20 fantasy leagues, and you make your first-round selection, folks of America. Anyways, that was a very long way to get to the lowest possible rating a video game has ever had at Metacritic. I've never heard of this company until the news is broke that they received a 0.4 rating out of 10. And to me, that is more cumulative. Madden 21 received such a ridiculous rating because there have been videos, and some of them are absolutely hilarious. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, the Super Bowl celebration for the last 4 years of the game has been so untouched that they created a side-by-side simultaneous, and it's amazing. I mean, it literally they haven't touched anything in 4 years with the game. Yeah. There are moments, absolute bugs that have not been addressed, and it's just amazing to me how they could go so long with doing so little and still have the audacity to say they're trying their best. I mean, at least tell us a little bit of what really is going on. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me that they could go this long unscathed, and it's somewhat sad. But they throw out the yard cover, and it covers up some of their warts for this year, which is just going years without touching so many modes of the game. Sad, but it's the way it is, and maybe it's the sign of things to come.
My biggest thing, and again, have not played this year's yet, but in years past, like, they had long shot mode. I enjoyed that for the 2-3 hours of gameplay it gives you. My biggest thing, because I am not a Ultimate Team player, and I feel Ultimate Team is really the anchor that brings the game down, because they put so much into that because it gets them additional money after the game has been released, and it makes things like franchise mode, which of course we all play. It should be the cornerstone of the game. It's not right now. That's clearly Ultimate Team. For a prime example, when you open up the Madden menu, Ultimate Team is the first thing. To find franchise mode, you got to go into game modes and find it's little, but it's subtle to let you know that we don't care about it. But again, I'm getting it. I know what the franchise mode is, and I'm not someone who rips Madden completely to shreds. Madden gives you a totally fine, once the day one patch comes out and they fix the initial bugs, it is a totally normal, reasonable football game. But it's not where it should be in the year 2020. And so my thing is, I've had the past couple. I think I bought last year's, and then I bought 18. I think I skipped 19 is what happened, or something like that. I buy it like every other year now. But I still can have fun in the game, but it is not as immersive as it should be. So I'm not someone who's going to give it a 0.4, but I am going to give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Like I'm not. And for those out there that do feel that frustrated with the game, I mentioned them already earlier. Maximum Football is a game that's produced by a small team in Canada known as Canuck Play. It has pro football rules, college football rules, and Canadian football rules if you want to completely mix it up. Game is 100% customizable. You can change player names, team logos, team colors. You can create every single team you've ever wanted. You can make XFL teams, AAF teams, whatever you want. Again, this is a group of people, it's maybe 6 or 7 people at this point that are creating this game. Last year was their first physical release, and it comes out in September. So and it's going to be half the price. It'll be $30. So if you are really sick of Madden as much as people say it is, I'd say put your money where your mouth is in it respectfully, but try to support a company that's trying to be that difference in the football gaming community that everybody wants. So for those that haven't played it, I wouldn't necessarily go back and play 19 because that was their first year of having a game on this magnitude. But when 20 comes out, I definitely recommend people trying it. They don't have it like Madden, like it'll be Maximum Football 2020. They don't do the year ahead of time. So if you're looking for it and you see 2020, that is this year's game. It'll be out. Date is not out yet, but sometime in September. So that's my rant there. I still find a way to enjoy Madden, but if you're at the point where you can't play Madden at all, look into Maximum Football. It might be what you're looking for. So,
now, is that Maximum Football something where you can share rosters and share team and uniforms with other people?
There is so you can create logos. There's a logo creator. So let's say you wanted to make because again, there's a college mode. Let's say you want to make the USC Trojans. There are ways you can make that. They don't have a roster share feature yet due to the fact that they are so small. It would involve a server, like a server that they don't have the people to maintain. That being said, there's also no online play yet. It's very much either you play by yourself or your buddy on the couch with you. It kind of brings it back to the older Maddens that we all loved, right? So it gives you that, it's more about the single player and maybe co-op experience, I would say so far. So yeah, that's definitely a question a lot of people have. There are no roster sharing capabilities yet, but again, the more support you get, the more people they hire, the closer chance that becomes a reality. So
yeah, that's awesome. And it's something that's been overdue because when you're sitting so far in the lead because you have a monopoly over NFL likeness, it's very hard given the Madden's position. I mean, it's depressing, but it's very hard to see the laps you're ahead of other video games as of a few years ago and not get incredibly complacent. And that's what we've seen right now. We've seen so many people work on the game, but very little really get done. But like Phil said, after the patches are out, I mean, right now it's pretty bad. I mean, you can't play a franchise game without half the time you finish the game and it crashes and you have to start all over again. I mean, that was something last year didn't provide. So it's hard not to look at it and be very frustrated. But after the patches, it's usually a fine game.
Yeah.
It's 6 out of 10.
Yeah, like I remember years of going to, I'll date myself here, I'd go to Blockbuster and pick it up at midnight, whereas now I purposely wait a week and a half, 2 weeks for the game to come out so I don't deal with the day one bugs when it comes to really any EA title. Like I have FIFA 20 that also they added a FIFA Street element. Volta is what they call the mode. Again, not as great as the classic FIFA Street games, but it does give you a whole nother reason to play the game. You want to have fun with it. You don't always want to just play your standard 11-on-11 game. So when I do get it, I plan to go I'll stream some games, maybe get Nick online. We can play some of the yard. And when Maximum Football does come out, I plan to stream some of that as well. So look out for more gaming content as far as not just the podcast on this channel. And we'll get obviously more NCAA Football 14, the proven one on Nick's channel there. So on the way out here, we normally do our Twitter handles. I'll have that below in the intro. So for when that happens, and if you guys want to jump in, I am a PlayStation user, so my PSN name is For The Brand 83. If you want to jump in there. So Nick, on our way out, what is your? Because it's not ChargerDude 95. I always think it is. What is your PlayStation handle as we move into this next year of sports gaming?
TurismoDude. Yeah, TurismoDude, capital T. And there you go. Yeah. So yeah, you can play me on there.
There you go. So as it moves forward, like I said, I'm really intrigued in the yard. I think by the next time me and Nick are out here, I'll have a good kind of review of it myself. I know it's not going to be quite as good as NFL Street, but if it's 60, 70% of that, I'll still have a lot of fun with it. I even tried it on mobile. You can play the Madden mobile version of it for free, and it's a little harder on your screen, but it gives the same general idea. And, that passed an hour for me the other day. But other than that, guys, I think we got through a lot today. It was, as always, great to have Nick on the show. Couple weeks, we'll give we'll see how we're doing in our fantasy league, and hopefully we have plenty of college football games to talk about. Because football season's here. We made it through, guys. Give yourselves a pat on the back. I'm Phil. That's Nick. Thank you for listening to Phil Talk Sports, and we'll catch you next time.
Go Lakers!